Hey, welcome back to Church for the Rest of Us. Jimmy Scroggins here with my co-host Leslie Bennett, as always, broadcasting from our studios high atop the skyscraper at Family Church downtown in West Palm Beach, which is actually on the third floor. Also with us, joining us via Zoom, our great friend Dean Inserra from City Church in Tallahassee. Dean, thanks for joining us today on Church for the Rest of Us.
Hello to our friends in West Palm. It's good to see y'all.
Man, it's
only about 6 hours from Tallahassee.
Yeah, that's right. But we still know how to get there, don't we?
That's right.
And Dean, you're a lifelong Miami Hurricane season ticket holder, so I just want to throw that in.
Oh.
Fourth generation. My kids are fourth generation.
There you go. And committed wearer of the Cole Haan footwear.
Oh, yeah. I think I have probably the best shoe Sunday game in the Southern Baptist Convention right now.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about your socks, but I do like your shoes. They're great. And Leslie, Dean and City Church have been just great friends of ours for many years now.
They sure have been. And the other thing that we have in common, Pastor Dean, is your love for Tom Brady, because my son is a huge Tom Brady fan. So I'm always telling him that he should follow you on Twitter so
That's
that
awesome.
he can have that in common with you. So
it was a fun postseason for sure.
Oh, no question. Well, so
That's
Dean,
right.
so if you don't follow Dean on Twitter, you should, because he's a lot of fun to listen to. But Dean's favorite compliment is to call you Brady class, and his favorite slam is to call you a jabroni. So I love that about you, Dean. Hey, we're talking Multisite today. And so, Dean, what I'd like to do is just have you share with us a little bit about City Church's kind of multi-site journey. I think several years ago, I actually had the opportunity to have some conversations with you and your team as you were preparing for that. I know you were talking to a lot of people, and you guys did launch another site. So I just love for you to just kind of share with our listeners something about your journey.
Yeah, and those conversations are so helpful for us. Our church at the time was just turned 10 years old.
Yeah.
We are about to be 14 now.
Are you still a church planter? I mean, what are you now?
Yeah, I mean, I still get invited to young pastors' luncheons, so I'm not really sure. So I guess
Yeah, I don't.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And so we started having that conversation of, okay, here we are, church is going well, we have this great building. Do you keep adding services? Do you expand more? Kind of like, if we want to reach more people in our city, what does it look like? And Tallahassee is different than a West Palm. There's no like Palm Beach Gardens or Wellington or, there's no like surrounding some like different kind of towns in the county. There's just Tallahassee. There's no suburbs.
Right.
So we're trying to strategically think about how do we do that? So I guess you just kind of go to another corner town in Tallahassee and see where there aren't a lot of churches. And that's kind of how we started exploring it. It was like, hey, what's considered a far drive in our community for Tallahassee Drive? That instead of just trying to add services for people that might not drive 20-something minutes, 30 minutes to get here, and instead we went over and tried to reach an actual neighborhood in a side of town where life was happening. So that was after conversations with you guys, there's a lot of prayer, a lot of back and forth, that we decided, hey, let's go give this a shot. Instead of adding a third service here, let's go and try to start a second campus across town. And that's what we set out to do.
And so how was that transition for you, Pastor Dean, moving from being a single site pastor to being a multi-site pastor, somebody who's gone through that recently?
Yeah, it was a challenge because I think we really were trying to wrestle with what is our identity. It's like we were never fully at the beginning settled on what it was going to be from a preaching standpoint. Is it going to be video? Is it going to be kind of a hodgepodge of some live, some video? Is it going to be me running back and forth, the campus pastor preaching? Rotating 5 guys on our staff. We just didn't. I feel like I never really was settled convictionally on that. Just being honest, for people that are listening to this and that maybe are working through the same thing. So I think that was always hard for me because I never fully landed, in my spirit, I guess you could say, about what it needed to be from a preaching standpoint. So that was a challenge. For the rest of the staff, it was a big adjustment because our kids team, we didn't have the budget just to go build an entire staff for a second campus.
Right.
So our kids team, for example, is used to having 4 staff members on a Sunday, and they went to 2 because we sent 2 over. But the other campus didn't really lose people.
Right.
We sent people, but it replenished right away after we sent people over. So that just made things complicated for everybody for trying to figure that out. So it was definitely there was excitement, but also a pretty big challenge. But the other flip side of that is it threw people into leadership faster than they would have been able to in a good way if we'd just been at one campus. So your person who was like a number 3 in command now became a number 1 and that type of thing. So that was very valuable for us.
and it makes you get another number 3. So it does for
There it
both
is.
sides. And I so resonate with that, Dean. We've experienced that over and over as we've launched new campuses or new churches, is that you think you can't afford to send your best leaders because then what are you going to do? But the truth is, you can't afford not to send your best leaders, because then it causes new people to step up who have been sitting on the sidelines. But it also gives you an opportunity, as you said, to advance some people. And Dean, you guys did that. And I also want to just mention, you said that you hadn't settled convictionally on what to do with the preaching. And I think that is a huge question that every multi-site church needs to kind of wrestle with. But I would also just encourage you, everybody listening, that I don't think there's a right answer to that question. I think there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. There's a lot of great ways to do preaching and to figure that out. And so I just want to say that there's no shame in your game if you're kind of feeling unsettled about that or not sure what to do. It's okay. A lot of us are wrestling with that all the time.
Yeah, and I think you get to turn on the noise a little bit too, because there's so many voices out there, articles about how, you're Satan's third cousin twice removed if you do video, things like that. So it just, you got to turn off the noise sometimes and really just get wise counsel, people you trust, and go and make a move.
Yeah, and I completely reject all that kind of. So I kind of feel like, hey, if you want to be a single site pastor with one service, like our friends at 9 Marks, I'm 100% in favor of that. If you want to be a multi-site church that does video, like our friends at JD Greer at Summit, go ahead and do that. If you want to do a live teaching model like we do that. I mean, I'm for all of it, and I believe that the scriptures give us the freedom to contextualize some of this. And even my friend Jonathan Lehman, although he would dispute that, we're still friends, and I'm still thankful that he's talking about these things.
So, Pastor Dean, you mentioned to us before we started recording that COVID has had a great impact on your move to go multi-site. So why don't you tell us what's happened since March of 2020?
Yeah, so we started our second campus. We called it our East Campus, and that met at a middle school here in town. That's really the best thing Tallahassee has to offer for new starts, church plants, is schools. That's probably common in a lot of places. We don't really have like theaters or performance art kind of places outside of the university. So I thought we were going to go. The only real hope, and we didn't have the time or the money to go take out rental property, do a build out, all those kind of things. So school just made the most sense. Already built out for the stage and all those type of things. Easy for children stuff because there's classrooms.
Parking.
So we went there, and it actually was great. It was new for our folks to have to go to portable again. See, a challenge for us was we were portable forever as a single site church. And then we actually went to this building we have now. So I think our folks are kind of like, we don't have to be portable anymore. And then a couple years later, we're like, here we go. We need to sign up to set up a tear down team. And they're like, what?
Right.
So, but people stepped up, as churches always do, church members who get it and are on board for the Great Commission in our city. So what happened, though, is our local school system is really strict about COVID and the facilities. So there's usually dance recitals meet in the schools. They can't be there anymore. There's Boy Scout troops, even like flag football after school. I mean, all kinds of things. And so we got kicked out because of that. And we had a great partnership. It wasn't the principal's fault. She loves us being there. But what happened was they don't let anyone use the facility besides the 8:30 to 3 o'clock school day, Monday through Friday. So right now, and again, I think it's probably just a good conversation for the listeners about Multisite. It's not just like, hey, we started Multisite and it's blowing and going and it's awesome. No, it's like we started Multisite and we don't have one right now because we had to.
You're crushing it, man.
We had to suspend the campus because there's nowhere else to go, nothing to do. And the thought of trying to come back after being down for 4 or 5 months with lockdown at 2 campuses. One, we couldn't physically if we were going to use the school. And second, it just sounded like it was not the best way for us to come back. So now we're just started with our elders and some of our staff. We kind of like a multiplication. What does it look like for us? Kind of subcommittee of our elders who are talking through now. Okay, now that we're starting to get back somewhat normal, and we're probably about 60% right now of what we were, but with more folks coming back every week. Okay, now what does multiplication look like again? Is that exactly where we want to go? Is that the best option? Should we plan an autonomous church instead in town that we help get going? So it'd be a transition kind of thing. Or do we go full speed multi-site again like we were trying to do before? And it went well. It wasn't gangbusters, but it went well. And the folks that we had to sit down and tell that it was having to be suspended were really upset about it. And that kind of communicated a lot to me. Wow, these folks have really built community here. They really love this campus. They were really pretty heartbroken about it. So that actually, even though I felt for them in that, at the same time, I was like, wow, this actually worked. They really went all in. They weren't going, oh man, we're the JV campus, or when there's only 2 campuses, it's easy for that to happen.
Yeah.
Especially when we broadcast from the other one, I'm at the other one, that type of thing. So the fact that they loved it so much was like, okay, there's something here to where I think if we did it again, most of those folks would go right away again.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so everyone understands what kind of scale we're talking about. You planted your church from scratch 14 years ago out of your own living room. And so tell us about kind of what scale we're talking. So at your original campus now, where you have your own facility, which is awesome. I've been in there several times. How many people normally attend there? Like, if you're 100%.
Yeah, I mean, over 1,600 people, which for Tallahassee, just for perspective,
it's a giant church. So you got
crazy.
that.
Yeah.
And then you sent how many people over to your new campus when you started it a few years ago?
Over 200.
All right. And then
that was a challenge for us. It was so new. It was really a challenge for us to get everybody on board to go.
All right. So you sent 200 people, and did they go down, go up, stay stable? Like, what happened over the time then you were doing that campus?
It fluctuated between stable to dropping a little bit by 30 or 40 along the way. The concept of multi-site, multi-campus was just so unique in our town.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we first sat down to talk to people about it, they were like, why would we do that?
We can drive from there, yeah.
Yeah, because in their minds, church was you grow a big building, and we've seen this church become what it is, and in our community, and it's really an influencer in Tallahassee by God's grace, and we get, we've seen 4,000 people at our Easter service. I mean, just crazy stuff like that. So they're going, why would we want to go split up our church? And they would see it as kind of like us and them. Like, oh, we don't want that person to go over there. We want them singing here on stage. Right. They just didn't really get it, a lot of people. So if I do something over again, we might have spent a little bit longer casting vision and investing more in the original launch team. Even though there truly was a team that was fully on board and went over and made it happen. That was one, I think we went a little too quick.
Yeah, so talk about that. Like, what would you try to do? What would you try to build into that launch team before you sent them if you were doing it again?
More people. And I think I'd have spent more time getting the rest of the church who wasn't going to get why we were doing it. They were kind of like, oh, okay, cool. But the other side of them was like, why? Like, why do we do that? We have this great place here, and it's not that far away. Like, why are we doing that? So I would have spent more time doing that, just trying to, like, maybe more individual small group meetings. Because one thing to cast a big vision from stage, it's another thing to actually go sit down with folks and go, hey, we need you to get this. And here's what we're like, some key people. But I think we would have I think we probably would have figured out the staffing differently, like who was best uniquely situated to go over and do that. Maybe people who would have served the church in better roles than the roles that they were in. Kind of those type of things. The school, we probably would have stayed with the school because it was the best option in Tallahassee to have a school like that. But I think we just would have done more big picture so the whole church got it together. Everybody understood rather than just a couple hundred people.
I think that's so important because there's sometimes when you really don't need buy-in, you just need permission. But there's another sense in which if you're going to really support something financially and by sending people and resources, it does cost you something at the mother campus to plant something new. I mean, if it doesn't cost you anything, you're not doing it with enough, emphasis. And so I think that's a really great point, and that's something that all of us need to learn from, Dean. And I also think that part of what happens when we staff a new campus is we don't think hard enough about what it means to put conveners at that campus. And by conveners, I just mean people in your church that naturally are able to pull people in and pull people together. And you're a convener. You're like a natural convener yourself. So you probably don't think a lot about it. You're just like, well, why can't everybody just have a meeting and have a bunch of people show up? I mean, just have a meeting and a bunch of people, why don't you just do that? Yeah. And of course, you just realize that there are only some people that are naturally that way. But if you start something new and you don't put some of those people there, no matter how organized they are or how gifted they are, if you don't have conveners in the mix, it's hard to get people behind it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest discouragement and again, if there wasn't COVID, our campus would still be going. I mean, Lord willing, and hopefully we would have grown by now and those type of things. But I think maybe the biggest discouragement I had was we didn't see a ton of new people come. We see that happen every week by the dozens and dozens at our other campus, our original campus. It's we call our Sessions Road campus. I mean, every week to this day, we see dozens of new people, but we didn't see a ton of people from the area and the community. We saw some. We actually saw some people come to know the Lord from that area and get baptized. We saw some neat things happen, but just not quite what we thought it would be. But again, I had to be okay. It's only been 2.5 years, or been 2 years, so still kind of getting settled there. But I'm like, let's go, like take the hill kind of guy. So multi-site and any kind of church planning is a little tricky for me because I'm just such a like results now guy to a fault. I know that's not a great thing. That's just how I'm wired. So that was really a challenge for me to have to be patient through some of that.
Well, one of the things that I've discovered about helping put new leadership at a new campus is you've got to have what I call lion leaders involved. So you almost have to have someone who's barely willing to work for you over there at that campus. You have to have someone who could basically plan it without you, but for some reason they just feel called to do it with you, and they kind of believe that because City Church is behind me and Dean's behind me, I'm actually going to have rocket fuel and I'm going to do better because I'm with them. But if I didn't have them, I could plant this church anyways. If you don't have that guy, it's really hard to make it work. It's hard to have kind of it's just kind of hard to have a systems process guy convening and running a campus that needs to grow.
Yeah, or just kind of like a really faithful shepherd, pastoral kind of guy.
That's right.
But you really do need a take the hill kind of person, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's hard to find those guys, and it's also hard. Most of those guys are already out there doing it, and they don't really need your help. So there are guys like you who are starting stuff in their living room. That's exactly right. Well, listen, one of the things that we're battling and struggling with as a church is as we come out of COVID, regardless of how many campuses we have, like how are we measuring engagement? And I know that's something that we're talking about every day at Family Church, and the people at City Church are so smart.
Yeah, so what are you thinking about, Dean, as you think about this new reality that we have? We're saying we can't talk about what it was like before COVID. We're not allowed to say that here. We have to talk about what is right now. And so with what is right now, how is your team looking at the people that are coming, and how are you engaging with them?
We have to connect people right now, I think, better than we've ever connected people before. So like connections, that's our conversation. And we have got to move people into the life of the church, because it's those who really were in the life of the church beforehand who are the ones who stuck around, and who came back quickly, minus people who maybe were 90, years older. We do have that. Or people that were caring for an elderly parent, that kind of thing. But just that connection point, that we have to be able to make big church feel small. It's like when you're a large church, or excuse me, when your church planting first began, you kind of wow people with excellence. But they walk in, it's kind of like, wow, I didn't expect all this. They like have it all together here, and wow, this looks pretty great, and they did a good job. But I think once you get established and get larger, you have to wow people with personal. Mm-hmm. And I just think we have to be more personal than we've ever been before with people, and just more pastoral and more connecting people. And also, I think we have to be clear about the message. And that's one thing we're saying now is, look, if we have ever been like just proven right, I mean, the resurrection proves us right, but if we ever have been proven right about just how other things are just fleeting and meaningless and vanity, and that these are the things that really matter, the things of Christ, the good news of the gospel. If there's ever been a time to go, okay, this is for real, it's now. So if people aren't willing to listen now, we're in big trouble. So we also want people to be white hot evangelists right now, and just totally getting after it, and not get sidetracked by all the other noise happening in our culture, but to lock in. So by connection, also be making disciples too. I don't mean just like getting somebody plugged in, but actually giving them a process. So we're just really trying to be a little simple right now. And the conversations we're having are three main things: connecting people, getting people into our equipping discipleship environments, and then a big plan of how to send people out. So in our kind of strategic team meetings, those are the three things on the whiteboard: connect, equip, and send.
I like that.
That's allowed us to lock in. That's allowed us to lock in.
Hey, man, 3 things on a whiteboard. That's a lot of us could learn from that for sure. Hey, Dean, as you're thinking about multi-site, and we're continuing to talk about that, there's probably some listeners that are listening who are kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, we should do multi-site, or maybe they're feeling pressure, or maybe they think it sounds like the coolest thing, or maybe they're already doing it, and now they're kind of like, oh my gosh, this is harder than I thought. What are some things you might just say to guys who are contemplating multi-site, or who are just starting out, that would be some really good advice for them to hear from you?
I mean, I think almost like just a church plant from scratch. You have to go in knowing it's going to be hard. like it's going to be difficult. And when you're used to like poof and it turns to gold, just like in a crazy sort of way, and then you almost like expect that to happen just in our own, just worldly thinking. We just expect, oh, this was awesome here, so now everybody's going to want to go on this side of town because there's a sign out front that says City Church. So be prepared to have some humble pie too along the way, because it's really complicated. But the advice I would give is you need to really decide, do you think this is the best avenue for our local church to reach more people and make more disciples in our community? And the answer might be no. It might be we're just going to keep it this one place and we're going to keep adding services here. That's fine, But we learned this. We don't think someone's going to go to church in Tallahassee, Florida at 2 p.m.
Right.
There's only so many. Saturday
There's
night
a football game
in a
on.
college football town. Saturday night ain't happening in Tallahassee. So that's the question to ask. Do we really think that this is the best option? And you're not signing your life away to it. Like if it doesn't work as you want it to, it's going to stink. Eat a little bit of crow. Might even lose a little bit of leadership cred for a few days or so. A little bit of clout. But just go in knowing, and you're not going to go in going, man, hope this works. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you're not signing your life away forever. Like if you think this is an opportunity to see what is best for our church to reach more people in our community, I think it's worth a shot, especially if you're in a town where people aren't going to drive across town to go to church. There's a lot of towns people will drive past 25 churches to go to the one they want to go to. That's not everywhere. For some people that's like, I've been driving all week. I'm in I-95 traffic in South Florida. I don't want to go do that again on a Sunday afternoon. I want to just relax. Well, hey, we're going to plant a church in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
we've eliminated the excuses type of thing. So that's what I would say. One, expect it to be hard, but also really evaluate and ask the questions. How do we reach more people? I hope every pastor asks that question. How do we reach more people? And as a local church, and see if that is the best strategy for you to do that. And if it is, let's go. And then don't be afraid to spend the money and people resources up front. You can't be cheap. I always say there's 3 things you can't be cheap on: steak, toilet paper, and Multisite.
That's a new one. I put that one on a whiteboard right now. Somebody tweet that. That's awesome.
Steak, toilet paper, Multisite.
Dean, I just love your spirit. I love your church. I love your team. Every time I'm at your church or in your building or with your team, it's always encouraging. And I'm really grateful for you spending this time with us on Church for the Rest of Us. But you do have a best-selling book out there called The Unsaved Christian by Moody Publishers. Everybody should get that book and read it. It will help your church, especially if your church is full of religious type SEAL Team 6 Green Beret Baptists. They need to read this book. It'll help them think differently about themselves, their families, and their community. But also, you have a brand new book coming out. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, May 4th. Thanks for asking about it. It's called Getting Over Yourself. and it's
is that not the most Dean Inserra title that you've ever heard in your life?
I
love it.
Addressing the jabronis, but no, it's looking at this me-centered faith that's out there. That's really popular in Christian Instagram and just kind of what I call pop Christianity, where the message is that God basically exists for your dreams. And they use all these kind of like little code words like destiny and, the best is yet to come and all those type of things, which I do believe that the Christian life is the abundant life. But let's talk about what that actually looks like. So we're giving in the book, I'm giving Christ-centered answers to a me-centered faith. I want to help people see what this is and how prevalent it is, how it's influencing so many young people. This kind of new prosperity gospel, I call it. But then not just critical, but then to give real answers about what is the good life with God and actually what does it really mean to be blessed by God in Christ. So hopefully it's going to be helpful for a lot of people.
Well, I know that it is. And Dean, I just appreciate your thoughts and I appreciate the way that you are plain spoken and you do it in such an entertaining and interesting way. And one of the things, Dean, that I appreciate about you as a leader is that you have a sharp wit, sometimes a sharp tongue, but it's always with a dash of encouragement and optimism. It's never mean-spirited, and it's always a pleasure. So, Dean, thank you for being who you are in the kingdom of God and the body of Christ, and thank you for being my friend. And I just could not recommend to our listeners, if you're sending anybody to Florida State University, Florida A&M University, anywhere in the Tallahassee area, they should all be going to City Church, except for the ones, our listeners who are also in Tallahassee, go to other churches, and your churches are awesome too. All right, so anyways, this has been awesome, Dean, having you on the program. I'm Jimmy Scroggins. This is Leslie Bennett, Dean Inserra, signing off. Church for the Rest of Us.